Are you going to delay the TikTok ban?
Well, we have a deal on TikTok. I've reached a deal with China. I'm going to speak to President Xi on Friday to confirm everything up. We made a very good trade deal, and I hope good for both countries, but a very different deal than they'd made in the past.
Apparently, there will be no mass TikTok exodus to red nodes like in January, and the app will keep on being available to US users after the September 16 sale deadline elapsed. But it is the reason behind this latest deferral of the deadline that is interesting. You see, the US government has had a problem with TikTok for years, stretching back to the first iteration of Donald Trump's presidency 5 years ago. Under Joe Biden in 2023, employees of US federal agencies were instructed to delete the app off all government-issued devices due to apparent security concerns. These security concerns survived the bitter transition from Biden back to Trump, and they are now at the forefront of US-China trade talks. So what are these security concerns? Well, according to court documents in a lawsuit filed by the US Justice Department against TikTok's parent company ByteDance, China's national security laws could compel ByteDance to suppress certain content, hand over user data to the Chinese government, and gather sensitive, potentially useful information about American users. In other words, according to the US government, TikTok is effectively a mass surveillance tool under the control of the Chinese government, which can collect, analyze, and weaponize the data of 136 million Americans for the purpose of foreign information manipulation and interference.
What I want to know is, are our biggest adversaries using it to spy on us and gain national security leverage? That's all I want to know. And if the answer is yes, then ban it.
But here's the twist. If I repeat what I just said and I exchange US and China and replace TikTok with Google or Facebook or Twitter, that sentence would still be historically accurate. Because these were the exact reasons that Beijing gave for blocking access to most American social media platforms in China. The Chinese government even proposed the exact solution under which TikTok currently operates in the US, that foreign social media platforms must register locally with local ownership, and that all local user data must be stored locally and used in line with local regulations. When the US government proposed these terms back in January, ByteDance agreed to them, and all TikTok user data from the US is now stored in the US by Oracle. But most American social media platforms continue to refuse to do the same in China, which is why they cannot be accessed there. They insist that while the US information space remains under tight local control and effectively closed off to foreign influence, China and everyone else must leave their information spaces wide open to unhindered US interference. In fact, the terms of the new deal that ByteDance has apparently agreed to state that in addition to storing US user data locally and selling TikTok USA to a consortium of American investors including Oracle and Andreessen Horowitz, a new TikTok USA app will actually be built from scratch under the watchful eye of US regulators just to ensure that there are no Chinese backends and to gain greater control over the platform algorithm. Now, of course, the immediate reason for this regulatory fixation on TikTok is not hard to figure out.
The majority of Gen Z have an unfavorable impression of Israel. And my friends, I think the reason of that is that we're losing the digital war. Okay, they're getting their information from TikTok and whatever it is, and we're losing that war. And when you think about it, the masters of the universe are Jews. We got Zuckerberg, we got Sergey Brin, we got a group across the board, Jan Combs, founded WhatsApp. It's us. And we have to figure out a way to win the digital battle. Amelia, we got to get our digital sneakers on. And when we do that, the future of Israel will be stronger because the majority of all Americans will support Israel. We'll make that happen. We have to make it happen. Thank you.
But beyond that, here are some questions to think about. Why is it okay for the US government to block access to social media platforms with hundreds of millions of American users? Because it has concerns about protecting its citizens' data. But it's apparently not okay for the Chinese government to do the exact same thing. Why is it called protecting sovereignty when the US government does it, but internet censorship when the Chinese government does it? More importantly, as a user of the supposedly free American digital platforms like the one you're watching this on, why are you to assume that TikTok potentially sharing some of your user data with the Chinese government is a terrible outcome to be avoided at all costs? But when the American tech bros who control basically all your data spend years collaborating with the NSA through the PRISM program and eventually get decorated as commissioned officers in the US Army, somehow there's nothing to see here. And finally, if you accept that language creates reality, then who controls the language and thought parameters through which the same thing is labeled in very different ways depending on who's doing it? Questions.